Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Zach, and I work for the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. This is our first in our new series that we're launching called Making the Most of My Legacy. I hope everybody's doing well. It was really great to catch up with everybody. And for the ones who are here, thank you. And for the ones who will be receiving this recording, we hope you enjoy this as well. So it's been an interesting half a year. So I hope everybody's continuing to do well. And I think that, like myself, having a family during this time, you start thinking about your future and securing your assets and really making the most of your legacy and making an impact with what you have. So we decided to launch this series with our professionals from Cereus Financial. We have David Haas and Michael to help us sort through all of this chaos, because it's definitely, if you're anything like me, the finance world is kind of like, I don't know, what do I do? So these are just going to be some helpful tips, guidelines, conversation starters and pieces to talk about. And I hope you find that this is something that, is really valuable to you. So I'd like to introduce David Haas, who has been a member of the Trail Conference for 30 years, and my good friend and a longtime volunteer. I don't know where I would be without him. So without further ado, David, take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hopefully you'll be able to see my screen when I share it, because I got some slides. So today we're going to talk about donor advised funds. That's the subject for today. Although afterwards, if you have questions on anything, I can try and answer them. Let's see. There we go. So I am the owner and president of Cereus Financial Advisors. We're a registered investment advisor company and financial planning firm in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. And I help clients with comprehensive financial planning, investment management, college planning, retirement planning. I guess I can skip some of this stuff and just say I've been an active volunteer with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, mainly in fundraising, both on the events committee. We've been trying to put on the galas every year. And this year, unfortunately, we have to skip it, or at least skip the in-person one. And I've also been active on the membership and development committee. And it's kind of redundant. So let's talk about a donor advised fund. So it's not a duck, and it's especially not a Daffy Duck, but we use the initials DAF. A donor advised fund is actually a charity. So it's a 501c3 charity, just like the charities that you're trying to support. And what that means is that you can donate to the donor advised fund, and you're able to get a tax deduction when you make that donation. And you can donate all kinds of assets, which we'll go through, not just cash. And the funds are invested. So if they're not immediately dispersed or granted, is the term they use, to other charities, then you can invest your funds. So why bother using a DAF? Well, it's all about taxes. So a donor advised fund is an excellent tool that can make your donations more tax efficient than they would be otherwise. So, by the way, I shamelessly stole this slide from Mike Dunn's slides last September, altered it slightly to make put the donor in a good mood. but this is the way a donor advised fund works. So a donor is going to make a donation of either cash or assets to the donor advised fund that's in the middle there. That donor advised fund is going to be invested in some way. So there's some investment management going on. The donor can make grant nominations or suggestions to the donor advised fund. And then the donor advised fund turns around and distributes those grants to various charities. The donor gets an immediate income tax deduction, and depending on the type of asset that's donated, the donor can avoid capital gains tax. So this can benefit the donor by allowing a much larger tax deduction in some cases, and tax avoidance because you can avoid paying capital gains tax. So why use a donor advised fund? Well, one possibility is the bunching technique. So now that we've had the Tax and Jobs Act, the Tax and Jobs Act eliminated eliminated a deduction for state and local taxes above $10,000. That's actually the last bullet point here. At the same time, the itemized deductions, you can't make itemized deductions unless you're above the standard deduction, and that Tax Cut and Jobs Act raised the standard deduction. So for married filing jointly, it's $24,800 in 2020. And it's indexed for inflation, so it goes up every year. So maybe, you know, you used to make donations and you could deduct them, but if you can't itemize your deductions, you really can't separately deduct your charitable contributions. So a donor advised fund is a great tool because what you can do is you can donate assets to it in 1 year, and you can make grants from the donor advised fund in multiple years. So basically you can bunch multiple years. I used really 2 years as an example here, but you can bunch multiple years of donations in 1 year. So get it above the standard deduction and be able to take that itemized deduction in that year. And then you can give that money to charity by nominating the grants over 2 years, 3 years, however, you know, many years you want to use for the bunching technique. The other thing is that you can save on capital gains taxes. So this is extremely powerful. So this is an example. Again, I borrowed this from Mike. Thank you, Mike. Let's say an investor wants to donate to a charity and they have some stock. Maybe it's, you know, AT&T, Verizon stock or whatever it is, but they've made money on it. So this person has bought the stock for $20,000, so that's the tax basis, and now the stock is worth $50,000. So this person held the stock for more than 1 year, and they're in the 20% long-term capital gains bracket. So that means that they would owe capital gains tax at 20% if they sold this stock. So we've got 2 columns here to compare. So in the first column, the sell and donate net proceeds, what this person does is they sell the stock and they get the cash. So they get $50,000 in cash, but now they're going to owe capital gains tax on it. So the capital gain is $30,000, and assuming that it's a 20% tax rate, that's $6,000. So if they're going to donate the proceeds to charity, that amount that they're going to be able to donate is $44,000. So that $44,000 is a tax deduction. So that's great. But let's compare that to the last column, which is donating the securities directly. So we can easily use a donor advised fund for that. So they donate the securities directly, they transfer them to the donor advised fund, $50,000 worth. They don't need to pay taxes on that capital gains. So you'll see the one column, it says $6,000. The other column for the taxes is blank, because they don't need to pay those taxes. So now they can donate $50,000 to the charity, because the donor advised fund will sell the shares. Since the donor advised fund is actually a charity, it doesn't need to pay taxes. And this person can get a $50,000 instead of $44,000 tax deduction. So at their 35% rate, assuming that whole contribution can be part of an itemized deduction, if they donate the securities, they get actually a benefit of $17,500. And if they donated the cash, they would have only had a benefit of $15,400 from the donation as a tax deduction. But on the first column, they also would have had to pay that $6,000 in taxes. So the net benefit, you have this $50,000 that you want to give to a charity. Well, the net benefit, when you use the DAF and you donate the securities, is $17,500. If you were to sell and donate the cash, your net benefit, tax benefit that is only $9,400. So you want to donate, of course, but you might as well save as much in taxes as you can. So donating the appreciated securities works that way. Now, some charities, including the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, you can actually donate stock directly to the charity. But by using a DAF, you can make smaller donations to other charities. So, maybe you're donating $50,000 for the year, but you're going to give the trail conference, let's say you give the trail conference half, you're going to give the trail conference $25,000, but the other $25,000, you're going to make a bunch of smaller donations where you don't necessarily, you wouldn't be donating stock normally, you'd be donating cash. So by using the DAF, it gives you the maximum benefit tax-wise, and still allows you to make donations to charities, any charities you want, pretty much. So let's talk about what you can donate to the DAF. So we talked about stock. That's obvious, stock in public companies. But there's some things that aren't quite so obvious that can sometimes be very beneficial. You can donate private company stock. So the company that you have the stock doesn't have to be publicly traded. If you got some big benefit because you worked for a tech company, or you were an investor in private companies and you needed that stock deduction or tax deduction, sorry, you can donate the private company stock to the DAF. Similarly, if you have interests in LLCs or limited partnerships, you can donate those. Private equity, restricted stock, life insurance. So I really don't want to go into a lot of techniques with life insurance right now. But if you have an old life insurance policy that you don't need, you can actually donate the entire policy to a donor advised fund, and they'll decide what to do with it. In some cases, they might keep it, in which case, once you die, there's a big benefit to the donor advised fund. In some cases, they might sell it or cash it in, essentially, and they'll get the cash value. Some donor advised funds will take Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. Some will take real estate, although you typically have to donate an undivided interest in real estate. So you could donate a vacation home to a DAF. They'll sell the vacation home. Maybe you have a big gain on that vacation home. You wouldn't have to pay tax on it because you've donated it to the donor advised fund. The one thing that you cannot donate to a donor advised fund, or you should not, I guess you always can, but you should not, is artwork. So original artwork. In fact, if you have original artwork and you're interested in donating it, it really only makes sense to donate it to a museum who might display the artwork. And the reason is that if you donate it to a charity that has nothing to do with art, that charity will sell it. The IRS knows it will sell it. And so the value for your tax deduction is the tax basis, or the amount that you use to buy it. So not the value. So, you know, maybe you bought it for $100 at a garage sale, but it's worth $100,000. And you were on Antiques Roadshow. If you donated that to the Trail Conference or to a donor advised fund, unfortunately, you'd only get the $100 as a tax deduction. So that's something you should not do. Okay, let's talk about grants. So you're basically asking the DAF, it's a donor advised fund, to make a donation for you, a grant. So the DAF can refuse. Generally, they don't refuse, but you can put strings on your grant application and say it has to be used for a certain program. And maybe the charity says, well, we're not going to do that program. The DAF will investigate if you do that, and they might refuse to make the grant. Similarly, if it's a charity that may not qualify, again, the grant can be refused. So other rules are that you cannot get any personal benefit from the grant. So for instance, if the Trail Conference was having its gala, we were selling gala tickets, and you tried to buy them through your donor advised fund, that's not allowed, because you'd be getting the benefit of the nice meal, and so it's not a pure donation. It's okay if the charity gives you some little tchotchkes, so you know, a water bottle or a hat is considered minimal, and that's okay. So memberships are okay. So as long as I actually put in the slide here that you couldn't get swag, but if you get cheap enough swag, it's okay. But you can't have tickets or sporting tickets or anything like that. Okay, so no grants to individuals or political donations. If you want to have something like a scholarship fund, there are ways of doing that, which we could talk about, but you can't do it through a donor advised fund. You can designate other people or family members to help you make the grants. That's sometimes fun. You can put money into a DAF and then designate that your children can make the grants and choose the charities. It's a way of getting family members or getting kids to learn to be charitable. And there often are grant minimums. So it might start at $50 or all the way up to maybe $250 as a minimum grant. So where's the money? The donor advised fund typically has pooled investments. You will have some limited choices in what to invest in. Basically, it's usually broad categories like an aggressive fund, a conservative fund, a 60-40 fund. So there's some limited choices. The DAF provider generally does charge a fee, and you'll have to investigate the donor advised funds to see how much those fees are. It's typically less than 1%. Any money in fees, of course, are not going to charities, so it's always good to find out what the fees are. And the fees don't affect you so much if you donate from the DAF pretty quickly. Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, they all have donor advised funds. There are some that are not associated with these brokers. They're typically foundations or community foundations. There is one in New Jersey called the Community Foundation of New Jersey that has a DAF. And there are other ones as well. They're typically regional. So the only other thing to talk about is what happens to a donor advised fund at death. So the important thing to remember is that the DAF is already a charity, and it only takes your advice on the grant. So the money in the DAF is not yours. You can't will it to somebody else at your death, but you can designate successor advisors. So essentially, your successor can continue to make grants from the DAF if you designate a successor. And those successors can then designate successors for themselves. So, so you could keep it going and make it almost seem like it's a foundation. If there was no successor, then the DAF sponsor, whoever it is, Fidelity, Charitable, Vanguard, they basically can make grants as they see fit. They have policies for that, and they're typically well-known charities that they're donating to. One thing you could do is you could create an endowed giving program. So this is for a larger DAF account. Put a large amount in there, 100,000, 200,000. They can treat that account as an endowment and basically just make grants based on your instructions in perpetuity, and it's only the income. So it's a way of having a foundation-like structure exist beyond your death. And now, Jennifer, I think you're going to come in and talk about the Half My DAF matching grant.
So thanks, David. Learned a lot about DAF. A little more well-informed than I was at the beginning of this, so thank you. So this is a really cool initiative that 4 couples started, or 4 family foundations started, to motivate and initiate, you know, fuel into the nonprofit economy. So there was a challenge. I think it's $120 billion sitting in DAF funds right now, just, you know, being sort of a parking lot and not being used. So these 4 families got together and decided to put a challenge. So to motivate people to put money to help nonprofits who, like a lot of organizations, are suffering during the pandemic, and help them out. So the challenge was launched on May 5th, which became a Giving Tuesday, a global Giving Tuesday, which normally takes place in November. So during this pandemic, they launched an early Giving Tuesday. So this is the start of it, and it goes till September 30th. So the idea is that donating half of your donor advised fund makes the nonprofit that you donate eligible for anywhere from a grant matching grant from $10,000 and in 8 cases $25,000. So they've committed these 4 groups have committed to matching up to $1.4 million. And there's 2 rounds. So they are selecting randomly 300 nonprofits. And the first round was July 15th, where they gave out $600,000 in matching funds. And it was surprising. You know, the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference obviously is in both states, but New Jersey, there were no nominations for any nonprofit in New Jersey. So this is you know, it started out west, so a lot of them are pushing the challenge for nonprofits over there. So we want to bring it to the East Coast. We want the Trail Conference to be on the leaderboard and, you know, to be in the next round of potential picks. So September 30th is going to be the next and final pick. 150 nonprofits will be selected, and they're going to be releasing up to $800,000 matching funds. And this is all because of the uncertain times, the fact that a lot of donor-advised funds are just kind of sitting with this money, and it's to motivate and really spark some giving around, you know, around nonprofits. So it's really easy. So if you have a donor-advised fund, you commit to granting half of your donor-advised fund by September 30th. So once you make that transaction, you'll go to halfmydaf.com and you'll fill out the grant commitment form. And then once that happens, the Trail Conference will be automatically put in the system. And then, you know, we'll be eligible, hopefully, fingers crossed. You know, maybe we'll be one of the ones selected. Then we find that spreading the word is the next best thing. So in fundraising myself, I always say people give to people. So if you're passionate about something, people get passionate about something. Whether it's the same thing or that they think about a cause that they're, you know, really interested in and support. So once you make this, posting it on social media that you've committed to, you know, the Half My DAF challenge and putting it out there, it might inspire other people to also get on board as well. So the deadline is September 30th. And once you do submit your Half My DAF, you become a Half My DAF hero. And during these challenging times, you know, nonprofits need it more than ever, and especially the Trail Conference. We have seen an uptick at Trailhead. Our web traffic has gone up 125% since this time last year, which is huge. Our traffic and map sales has increased 243% over this time last year. So there are a ton of boots on the ground, or sneakers, or flip-flops in some cases. And so the Trail Conference has really become an essential part of people's recovery during this time. It's, you know, a chance for them to get out, connect with nature. So if you have a donor-advised fund and it's becoming a parking lot, so to speak, you know, really join this movement and you know, make the commitment. We would be honored to have you as our very own Half My DAF hero. So halfmydaf.com.
Well, here's a disclaimer. Basically, we weren't giving any investment advice here, just general educational information. I will be happy to take questions. And we're a small group, so it's up to you. You can either write your question in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question live, that's fine.
So, David, this is Jeff. I have a question. You mentioned that membership is okay if there are no benefits. And maybe this is partly a question to Jennifer too. So if a member of the Trail Conference wanted to now extend his or her membership for life, could that funding come out of a DAF?
Okay, I'm going to answer that. I would say almost definitely yes.
And
Because the amount you get, I mean, what do you get for life membership that's actually tangible? I don't think there's, right, Jennifer? I don't think there's anything that's really tangible. And if you get, you know, some clothing or something, I don't think that's going to be enough to cause an issue.
is that right, Jennifer? And how much is it?
Yes, so a life membership is $1,000, and we don't have it publicized on the website, so it doesn't come associated with like a premium, which we call is our swag. So yeah, and people do pay with their dues from donor advised funds, and it's usually says that on it for, you know, membership, somewhere on the memo. But for the most part, I usually see the donor advised funds being for unrestricted gifts, which a membership is an unrestricted gift. I'm not sure about the legality, like David mentioned, whether or not the donor advised fund would raise an eyebrow to it if it's, you know, the one case that I, you know, have seen somebody get, you know, sort of work the donor advised fund was for the gala. So they paid for a ticket, and then they also paid the non-tax deductible portion. They paid that through the donor advised fund. So like the donation part that they weren't getting taxed on came from the donor advised fund. So I think you could, I think you would just have to write it in the memo.
So I will point out, I have a Fidelity Charitable myself for handling my donor advised fund. And so when you make a grant, there's a pull down menu where you specify what it's to be used for. And you can write your own, you can do other and then write your own, but they have ones that are already canned, and membership is in there. So they know that people are supporting organizations with memberships right from the donor advised fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Actually, I do have another question, and maybe it's for Jennifer. So the commit to granting half your DAF by September 30th, is that just a commitment, or do you have to actually make the grant by September 30th, half the value of your DAF?
I'm pretty sure, and again, I can pull up the, you know, the frequently asked questions on half my DAF, but I think it's just the commitment. So you can either make the gift or the commitment by September 30th that, you know, funds will be released.
There's a set of detailed instructions on that website, but I don't recall exactly what it was.
Yeah, and they just keep using the phrase over and over, commitment. So to me, I think that it's not, you have to release the funds. So yeah, so I think a commitment, you know, yeah, and again, I'll do a little bit more research on the wording, and I can share that with you, Jeff.
Okay, and I'll check it out too. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other question I have for probably David is usually DAFs, and I have a DAF with the Vanguard, they have, I believe, a beneficiary form. In addition to having a successor, you know, trustee or whatever you want to call it, I forget what the term is, but the beneficiary could also be a way of making a contribution after one is deceased, right?
So a donor advised fund So obviously, you know, if you want to show this to me afterwards, that or another point in time, that'd be fine. But donor advised funds can't really have what I would call a beneficiary, or at least not in the sense of the money being left to somebody when you die. All it could have is a successor. I don't know what the right term is, advisor perhaps, who will specify grants. Now, there are other, you know, there are other forms of giving, and we'll talk about this in a later part of the series, something like a charitable remainder trust, where beneficiaries are definitely involved, or you could have a charitable lead trust. But a donor advised fund doesn't really have beneficiaries.
Okay, thanks.
So Jeff, I just found on the frequently asked questions. So you can submit a form, a nomination form, that you are going to be granting at least half of your DAF between May 5th and September 30th, and provide the DAF confirmations for the grant you make to the nonprofit. They basically said beyond that, we'll take you at your word. So it does sound like there's kind of an honor system, but they are looking to have the grant be placed and, you know, be in the works by September 30th.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Any other
Any
questions?
other questions?
Well, thank you so much, David. It was very informative. I learned a lot, and I hope that the half my DAF challenge is something that individuals who have the capacity to give and have donor advised funds consider for the trail conference, put us on the map. This is a series, and I meant to put this on one of the slides. Our next one is September 2nd, and it is qualified charitable funds, right? Distributions and
Qualified charitable distribution.
there it is. So the first Wednesday of every month, we're going to be having one, and I'm hoping to have the whole series up. But I'll also include that in my thank you note to you all for coming. So I hope you enjoy this and found it useful. And really thank you to David and Michael and Cereus Financial for providing this series for the Trail Conference. It really means a lot.
Okay, well, you're welcome. It was a pleasure, and I hope that I was helpful.
Absolutely. All right, thank you guys. Until next time, stay well, stay safe, and happy trails.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye. Thanks, David.
Bye, Jennifer.
Have a good one. You did great.